The Mill Dilly Surge, the tool that I just can't quite comprehend. I don't understand where this fits in the contractor's lineup. Why would you pick this over a much more powerful tool that was slightly louder? Same song and dance as the last review. We're going to run it through its paces, starting out with a torque test. Torque test with the fuel surge. We're going to put it in, make sure it's full of electrons. We're going to put it in third gear because the other gears don't seem to do much. And oh my goodness, what an underwhelming performance. 55 foot-pounds of torque. That's the lowest performing tool I've ever tested by an order of magnitude. And I tested it in all three different speed settings. So it has these buttons that, from what I can tell, it just makes the tool spin slower. And the third speed is like, you know, it's just not great. Okay, so the next test, drag races, and I paired it against the rigid octane, which is the second lowest performing tool I've ever seen, and it still got smoked. Anyway, here, check it out. Yeah, so that's the lowest, least, worst performing, most terrible performing tool I've ever seen. And for that, anyway, let's move on. So the next test is a handling test. This is where this tool does pretty good. So I actually took this tool to do it on the job, do the on-the-job testing with it. And there's one factor that weighs heavily on these tools, the reason that I picked tools. And first of all, it needs to spin fast enough to start a screw. If you don't have that speed, especially for self-tapping metal, doing metal work and stuff, this tool has it spins pretty quick. This is a great place to inject the Ripham's test. And I had to put this stupid thing back together to take the test, and oh my goodness, it was a nightmare. I had to stuff all the guts back up in there to get it together. This was one of the most difficult tools putting back together wise that I've ever dealt with. So I figured I would just add my 2 cents worth. So 28.69 on 3 gear. What's the first gear? Just for shits and gigs. 864. Second gear is 2092, and then what's big screw gear? Big screw gear, what's that? 2860, is that the same as 3 gear? Yeah, so I don't understand the difference in 3 gear and big screw gear. But it quickly gives out a steam, so it doesn't have enough power to push through the initial, when the kinetic energy transfers from the fastener into the material, it loses steam so fast that it's hard to work with. So here, watch the the handling test, and I'm also going to go through the little gears. What do the different buttons do? So third gear, you can't change the gear. So what does it do when it comes to screwing in this gear? Okay, that's third gear. What about screw mode? Whatever that is, drill mode. Seems like a less powerful version. Okay, what about one gear? I don't know who would use that. It's not good enough to do anything. Second gear. It's just a less powerful version of third gear. Yeah, and as you can see, it just doesn't feel good. I mean, it's you know, you might like it, but I just, you know, I don't like it. I don't understand what justifies the high price. It's just me, maybe. Okay, so the next test, we're going to see just how loud it is compared to a comparable unit. Well, screw that. I can't figure out how to make it work, and I'm not willing to put a lot more extra time into it. We'll just say that it is definitely louder, but they're both loud. I mean, neither of them are like, you know, quiet operating tools. So the next test is the power analyzer. See how many torques and how many horses this thing has. So 276. Ugh. Terrible, terrible, terrible. To put that in contrast, the rigid the rigid octane had like 300. And the Bauer, so the Harbor Freight cheap $25 drill that I got on discount, it had like 321. So that explains why it ain't got no power, because it ain't got no power. Now, hopefully the insides are more exciting than the outsides of it, because it makes me ill. Ooh, wow. That is fancy. Got a lot of fanciness going on in there. Let's see if we can see what the clamshell's made out of. So we got the bog standard PA6 GF30. So glass fiber reinforced nylon, 30% glass fiber by weight. TPS, so thermoplastic styrene. And then we got some SEBS, so that is more overmold. So thermoplastic styrene is, of course, nitrile rubber. And it's got a lot of fat. Look how thick the overmold is. And then it's got some nice geometry, but look, the mold is kind of crusty. Not a very, look at this. It looks just kind of worn out. See, there's a lot of complicated science that goes into the creation of these injection molded parts. And this glass fiber that they squirt into the mold is really, really hard on the die. So it eats the die up. So it gets grimy and gritty. You can see these anchor points for the overmold, the throughputs. And then, okay, it looks like it's got these little silicon shock absorbers in there to keep the little baby brushless motor from bouncing around. I'm not blown away by the quality of this part. I've seen better, for sure. And then we have the little magnetic strip for the people that are interested in becoming convicts. This is the thing that turns you into that. So it's a comfortable tool. I really do like the way Wilk Dickey tools feel. Yeah, they put a lot of money and time in developing a comfortable tool, but look at this sweet son of a bitch right here. So first of all, starting at the bottom, we have these nickel-plated strips, these terminal strips, blades that they use on just about all their tools. And then moving up from that, we have a little circuit board that's connected to the switchy switch to change the modes. So this is probably the SEBS, the styrene, ethylene, butylene, styrene. It's like rubber, but it behaves like rubber without the vulcanizing process. To prevent dust ingress, so it's flush mounted. And then this is another injection molded part. It's got these little LEDs, and you can see all these tiny little surface mount components, little itty bitty baby resistors. Not very much to it. And then they use some silicone carney to stick-emulate the wires down. That's good for extra yankability. And then so we've got small gauge power delivery wires, and then we've got these two for thermal protection and overload coming out the bottom. And then look at this. Looks like, so this is epoxy compound they use to pot the circuit board. Can't get to it. If something were to fart the ghost out, there wouldn't be no fixing it because you couldn't get to it. And then look at this. So this is a header of some kind, 4-pin header. You would think that something might plug into that. I don't know exactly what it's there for. Then you have a balancing cap. This is for the electronic speed controls. The skiddly diddlies up in there. Keep the angry electrons from getting irritated. Moving on up to the potentiometer, the switchy switch. And you know, to be such an expensive tool, I don't understand why they don't put bellows on the potentiometer, the switches, to prevent, you know, dust from getting back in there and messing up the. So the way these potentiometers work is they brush, so they change the resistance in the circuit, and as you push it, the resistance increases. Bet we can showcase that. So this is one of my new favorite little multimeters. It's what I would call a multimeter for dummies. You don't have to worry about putting it on the white thing. So I'm sure it's going to auto range to resistance, and we can see exactly how this thing works. And it's going to change the resistance as we stink into it, as we give it the stank. So here we go. We're going to pull the trig. Okay, so you can see the resistance changing as I push the switch in. It caused more resistance to enter the circuit, which increased the chooch factor from this. So it told this to send more angry pixies to the motor. Getting into the beans and the franks. Ooh, look how fancy that is. Yes. Okay, anyway, we're going to look at the motor first. So, ouch, God, Jesus. Sweet baby Jesus, that's hot. Okay, so here's the rotor assembly. You can see these are stacked laminates. So there's permanent magnets inside the rotor. Let's see, it looks like probably a 4-pole. So a 4-pole brushless, and then It's got a little baby, a little old tiny baby. This is powdered metal. Maybe it's not. That might actually be a machined gear. But there are probably going to be magnets in the front of the rotor. That's how the Hall effect sensors determines the position of it. So we can look at this. You can see. So this is the stator, and these are actually the armatures. So you can count the number of turns, so the number of windings around each of the armatures. That dictates torque versus RPM. So the more turns, the more torque, because the magnetic field that's created is increased, but it decreases speed. If you have a few turns, the rotor is going to turn faster, but it's going to consume more energy, because literally the electrons are flying faster through it. They're making a trip around it faster and then returning back to the battery. And you can see deep down in there, those yellow globs, those are covering the Hall effect sensors. And then here's a nice shot of the circuit board. And it's got some people markings. So human beings have been back there writing. It's a very simple design, almost a pancake style. And they have really two different kind of brushless motors. They have these axial motors, and then they have the radial motors. And this is a pancake design. And then these wires, the little wires down there, go to the Hall effect sensors, and then these three bigger wires, these control the phases. So this is a phase, this is a phase, and that's a phase. Those are the three phases, and they alternate. And as they alternate, it swings this unit around, diddly diddly do, spins it. And this looks like so the little fan, that's an interesting design for a fan. Another interesting thing is they didn't have to balance this. Normally they go beep and they take a little chunk out to balance it. They didn't have to do that on this. And this fan, it does not appear to be glass fiber. It doesn't. Yeah, it is. Definitely. You can hear it. Hear the crackle. So glass fiber. It may be PA66. So now we're getting into the hot tamale of it. So this looks like probably polycarbonate, or maybe PA66 GF50. So it could be glass fiber, 50% glass fiber. And then it's actually got a solid roller bearing in there, and it's got a roller bearing on the ass end of the motor too. And it's also a sealed bearing to prevent dust from getting in there and jamming up the inner workings. So that's it's a nice addition. Like to see it. It's a little tiny one. It's a 5mm shaft, standard size shaft for these motors. Okay, so now we're getting into the fancy. Okay, so we've got this little pinion that goes into these three planetaries, and the planetaries turn this big ring-a-ling gear, and of course you have this to cap off the business end. And this is definitely not, I don't think that's molybdenum disulfide, which is kind of strange. You would expect to see the Primo grease in there. Here we go. Probably not ever going to get this thing back together. Okay, and we've got Oh man, look at that. I think that's a Delrin cap in there, because whatever it is, it's designed to mitigate friction, because that's actually rubs against this cast aluminum housing, and then it's got a silicone condom over the dingus end, so I guess you don't bump it anything ugly. But I don't know if we can get in any further, and I really don't want to destroy this tool just for the sake of looking at the impulse. I did order a broken stealth, so a rigid stealth that we're going to take apart to see exactly how the oil impulse drive head works. You can see a little bit of hot action through the porthole there. Not very much. I guess that's a vent. But I'm definitely not going to break it. So I've got a Delrin plug, and then this looks like a cast aluminum piece. Maybe got some surface milling for fitment. It's a nice, expensive, quite an expensive piece of kit here. There's no doubt about that. It's a shame that the performance just suck-a-lucks. If it had some real stank to it, I would promote it. But I have a hard time promoting a tool that ain't got enough power to do anything. Then last but not least, we got to give it a review. So review time. So performance. It ain't got a lick of performance. Probably the worst performing, well, unequivocally, without a doubt, the worst performing impact driver I've ever seen. So we're going to give it a 4 in performance. Ergonomics. It's a good feeling tool. Shut up, you. It's a good feeling tool, so I want to give it a 7.5. Build quality. It's a great, it's a Milwaukee. It's a, top of the line, primo, high quality, expensive. I'm giving it a 7.5, maybe an 8. Yeah, let's give it an 8. Why not? Electronics. They're underwhelming. It's I don't know if that performance would factor into the electronics. Let's say we're going to give it a 6.5 in electronics. Innovation, top tier innovation. I give it a 9 because I don't think that there's really anything more innovative than this oil impulse. And then value. To me, there is no value. The intrinsic value that exists in this only revolves around its ability to keep its mouth shut and be quiet, which I don't understand where that fits into the construction world. So I give it a 6 in value. So, and you can see, man, you better keep your mouth shut over there with all that nonsense. All right, so total, you can see the total, and then you can also see our full review on the website, review.wfskills.com. If you think my review sucks, then leave your own review. Absolutely, you're welcome to leave your own review. I would also like to hear from you guys if this tool fits into your day. How does this tool fit into your day? I can't fathom it. It doesn't make sense to me. There's really one metric by which I judge the value of tools, and that they need to be mean, nasty, spin fast, drill hard, high performance. That's the characteristics that I look for in a tool. So that's it. Until next time. Oh, we also got like I said before, we got one of those Stealth by Rigid coming. So I'm going to break it all the way down, and we're going to see exactly how the oil impulse head works. Till next time.